You know, and you may have heard about us talking, and nationally it's being talked about as well, buyer love letters. Chuck, explain, if you would, sir, as the attorney, what a buyer love letter is.
It's a real estate love letter. It's a buyer writing out paragraphs, sometimes longer, uh, missive as to why they ought to be picked to purchase this house. Oh, I can see my children coming down those stairs on Christmas morning. So that's what it is. It's a, hey, please pick me.
Yep. Now, realtors across the country have mixed feelings about love letters because there's a belief that writing a letter to the seller from the buyer gives the buyer an unfair advantage, especially if that letter contains, well, fair housing violations, using terms that should not be in the letter. So some realtors, both locally and nationally, refused and have been refusing to forward a buyer love letter to the seller. The National Association of Realtors Advice for Real Estate Professionals is to advise clients about the potential risks posed by a buyer love letter. The key problem is that there's a concern that the buyer would feel discriminated against if they lost to another buyer and could sue the interested parties over those fair housing regulations. Is that summing it up, Chuck?
Yeah, pretty much. It goes a little bit further. Most of the people that are, because it's not just realtors involved in this fight. There's a lot of fair housing outfits saying that there ought to be laws against doing this because in the example I gave, if I send a letter saying, hey, I love this house so much, I can just see my kids running down the stairs on Christmas morning, I've let you know that I have children, my familial status, which is something protected, and I've also let you know my religion.
Yep.
So if I send you a letter and put something like that, these fair housing groups are saying that gives the seller a greater opportunity to discriminate. I don't think anybody's ever going to confuse me with someone who is in favor of discrimination.
Yeah.
I'm really down on that sort of thing. Anyhow, the point being, I don't know that I agree with these groups. Bob, I've seen you get angry before over reasonable things. Should I handcuff you right now to prevent you from doing something illegal in the future?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that's fair. And to create a statute like Oregon did back in,
Yes.
what was it, 2020, 2019, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When Oregon created a statute outlawing these things, the federal courts kicked it down pretty heavily, saying that's a violation of the First Amendment. So, I really, we're professionals, right?
Right.
I'm going to go as an attorney. The first time you file your first lawsuit, you're freaking out. I've made a mistake. I've done something that's going to get me sued. But we're professionals. You get over that. We take the risk. We get paid for it. We get educated to try and avoid those risks. I wonder at what point the NAR's stance is actually just, hey, we don't want our people to get sued because somebody might take something and do something illegal on their own.
Right. Well, let me point out the reason this has come to a head this week is because this past week, Daryl Davis wrote an opinion piece. He's a real estate professional on a national website, and he's urging realtors to revisit buyer love letters and not promote misinformation, which is what's been going out there. And by that he means, he says, there have been no lawsuits, despite some realtors saying there have been lawsuits. There have been no lawsuits against a realtor for forwarding a buyer love letter. So, folks, here's why it's important for all of you who are listening to the show to understand this concept and why I'm bringing it up. Because if you're buying a home, or your kids or your family or your friends or your relatives are buying a home, it's very competitive out there. There are fewer homes out there, so anyone that's on the market is going to be prime real estate, literally and figuratively. So using a buyer love letter to try to sway the seller towards you becomes oh so important. And if there are people who are saying don't do it, you're being told information that is an unfair advantage to the people who would write the buyer love letter. So my point is, I understand that many of my colleagues here locally and around the country may disagree with my opinion and Chuck's opinion, but I suggest those of you who disagree in the real estate world, read the opinion piece by Daryl Davis on Inman and then form your own opinions based on fact as opposed to misinformation. And there's been a lot of discussion around the country, people on all sides of this thing. But you can take this, as Chuck points it out here, that you can take this much further, which would be detrimental to, because then do you remove the name of the person signing?
That's what I was going to get at.
Yes,
many
right.
names will give a national origin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was there not a time when you actually had buyers and sellers meet?
Yes.
Are we going to ban, bumping into each other at Whole Foods?
Well, one thing that happened, GLAR had a fair housing summit last week, and this topic was raised during the fair housing summit. And one of the things that they had talked about were these blind contracts.
Yeah.
Using a third party to actually scrub the names, because certainly names, do at least lean towards some sort of identification. But it is, they were discussing it at the Fair Housing Summit, and looking like 2024 is going to be a year that more and more information is going to come. No facts, no details were given, but it's certainly a topic that they continue to look into to try to make more fair purchasing decisions out there.
That's just what we need, is a third party now getting in the middle of everything else that becomes complicated.
But
as
look
a platform.
Look at how you said that, though, Brad. You're basically saying that the sellers are going to be unfair, and we need to prevent them from doing that. I can't see a legal basis to immediately assume somebody is going to do a bad thing.
Right. No, I understand your point there, and I'm simply passing on the information.
Yeah,
I
understand.
Systems that are they're in place and being reviewed to just essentially level the playing field.
Let me bring in son Greg just joined us from the car, and I know he's coming in late on this. We're talking about buyer love letters, Greg. You have opinion on this one way or another?
We just won a contract with one 2 days ago.
There you go.
So, my opinion.
Yeah. So
coming in hard, fast, and strong. Just
and
like
I see that all the time. I amplify what Greg just said. So listen, first of all, for listeners, if your agent doesn't want to use one, talk to them about it. Have them call me, and I'll point them in the direction of what is out there. Or again, if you want, just give me a call at any time, and we'll talk about what needs to be done.
The thing is, and not to come in too late on it, the thing is, there's no gray area here. We're not operating in the gray yet. This is a tool that you should be using to win homes. There is no legal reference or precedent, if I'm saying that correctly, Chuck, that would tell us, don't do your best to win your client a home, and or just because people don't like them, just know your audience and ask the listing agent first and foremost, hey, will you guys accept the love letter? Are you okay with that? And that's the best thing you can really do.
All right, let's move forward, because we've already spent much of the show on this. By the way, I should have said at the beginning of the show that if you're thinking about selling and you haven't picked a realtor yet, I would love to apply for the job, and we'd love to help you. You can call me at 376-5483 or go to bobsellslouisville.com and then just start filling out the information. That will get right to me. Okay.